Hello! Glad to see you made it here safely. It's my turn to wear the hat again, and hopefully I'll guide you through this constantly evolving house of hammer, but just don't touch anything, especially the pointy bits. And not you there with those sticky fingers, ugh. We're in room 25 this time. 25, a quarter of a century. That could well be how long it takes us to get through this entire hammer catalogue, but hey-ho, here we go. This time we're focusing on Death of an Angel, and with a title like that, you might be mistaken for thinking it's a slapstick comedy, but you'd be wrong. We are in fact back in the unsafe hands of posh people in peril, having posh people problems, only this time with a splash of poisoning and a slice of a whodunnit. The angel at the centre of this mystery is a much-liked village doctor's wife, who is cruelly poisoned late one night. It could be seen as the perfect murder weapon. While the victim writhes in an agonising death elsewhere, the killer can be nicely tucked up in bed with a cocoa, or in Ben's case, cleaning up the mess he's left in the kitchen. Fresh from updating the Young Poisoner's Handbook, he's here to give us a talk on toxicants.
I want to taste you, but your lips are venomous poison. You're poison, running through my veins. You're poison. I don't want to break these chains. Poison! Not my words, listener, but those of American rock musician Alice Cooper. Real name Vincent Damon Fernier. Once played a possessed bum who stabs a man to death with half a bicycle in John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. But I'm already going off track. I'm here to talk toxicants. Why? Well, frankly, why not? But in actuality, because poison plays a pivotal part in our picture of preference for this episode. In Death of an Angel, arsenic is taken from Dr. Welling's potions cabinet and a fatal dose is added to his wife's glass of evening milk. Murder, most foul, and a mystery to solve. This leads me to ask two questions. Firstly, about arsenic. It crops up as the fictional murder's toxoid of choice quite frequently, but why would a doctor need arsenic in his medicine cabinet? It seems to me a bit like keeping a chainsaw in your pencil case. And question two, how long have people been poisoning each other? And what with? Let's address that first point, the medicinal applications of arsenic, which is a natural semi-metallic chemical found all over the world in groundwater. For nearly 2,500 years, human beings have been using it, both as a therapeutic agent and as a poison. Derived from the Greek word arsenikon, meaning potent, it has been used to treat, amongst other things, ulcers, syphilis, diabetes, joint diseases and cancer. So there you go, at least some rationale for why Dr. Welling had it in his medicine cabinet, nestled between the pile cream and the Vicks Vapor Rub. Knowledge of toxic substances is likely as old as mankind, and poisoning is likely to be one of the oldest ways of killing. It can even be traced back as far as prehistoric cave dwellers, who noticed that when animals ate particular plants, they fell dead. Thus, they would soak their hunting tools in the juice of these toxic plants to aid with felling a mammoth or similar. And then, when we evolved from killing big hairy elephants to killing each other, poison was a foolproof method. For centuries, the presence of poison in the body of the victim was very difficult to determine, as medicinal knowledge was such that the symptoms of poisoning were very similar to signs of certain diseases. Therefore, the poisoner had a good chance of getting away, quite literally, with murder. In the Middle Ages, Paracelsus claimed that therapeutic and toxic properties of substances were indistinguishable up to a single parameter, that being the dosage. And this is still one of the basic pillars of toxicology. Arsenic was long considered the king of poisons, as well as the poisoner of kings. Throughout history, there are many accounts of everyone from grand royalty to mere commoners carrying out assassinations for personal gain, using this odourless, tasteless, and in other words, perfect poison. However, more modern medicinal methods mean it's now easy to detect, so the would-be killer would be wise to look elsewhere. What else is out there? Well, 5 other well-known toxicants are 1. Belladonna, or deadly nightshade, which was the probable cause of death of the Roman Emperor Claudius. 2. Hemlock. Greek philosopher Socrates was famously sentenced to consume a lethal dose after being found guilty of heresy. 3. Strychnine, a poison with no antidote, that is a possible cause of death of Alexander the Great. It's also the poison that Hooper tried to use to kill the shark in Jaws. Whilst in Jaws 2, Chief Brody poisons bullets with either mercury or sodium cyanide, depending on which source you trust more. It doesn't really matter because it didn't work. It was just a school of bluefish, I recall. Number 4, polonium is a highly radioactive chemical element that can be utilised as a poison. It's believed Irene Curie, Marie and Pierre Curie's daughter, likely died from cancer that developed after a vial of polonium broke in her lab. Number 5. Tetrodotoxin is a potent neurotoxin carried perhaps most notoriously by pufferfish, but also found in blue-ringed octopuses, rough-skinned newts and moon snails. The crew of Captain James Cook's ship HMS Discovery accidentally poisoned the pigs which were kept on board by feeding them the remains of some tropical fish that acquired mid-voyage. The crew themselves were mildly poisoned and fell ill, but recovered. The pigs, who had been given the most poisonous parts of the fish, were not so lucky. Other poisons of note include ricin, botulinum, anthrax, sarin, the aforementioned cyanide and mercury, amatoxin, thallium, and finally VX. Yes, that's the stuff from the 1996 Nicolas Cage action classic The Rock. It actually is a real, deadly synthetic nerve agent. At the end of that movie, Cage's character avoids being VX'd to death after exposure to it by injecting himself in the heart with atropine. I've often wondered if this is based in reality. I've looked it up. It's true. Why you blokes?
I've always thought of The Rock as a documentary. Now it's totally justified. Back to 1952 and Death of an Angel, though. It was co-financed by the American producer Sol Lesser, and was to have been the first in a 9-picture deal with RKO. This was to include Whisper and Smith Investigates after the divisive Whisper and Smith Hits London, but it wasn't meant to be, and after 1953's The Saints Return, the deal was considered done after the 3 films failed to perform. It's not hard to see why. Death of an Angel sees Dr. Chris Boswell eventually get into the village of Oakwood after a run-in with a typically backwater transport infrastructure, and it's where the Wellings reside. He meets 14-year-old Judy and her parents Mary and Dr. Robert. After playing in a cricket match and visiting one of Welling's elderly patients, young Dr. Chris is offered a partnership. It's never explained whether this is down to his mad cricket skills or bedside manner, but I'm going for the cricket. The next day, young Dr. Chris returns to the city to pack his bags, but later he is informed that Mary is deathly ill and he should return to Oakwood pronto. It's all a bit too late though, because when he gets to the hospital, a doctor informs him Mary has just died. An autopsy later on reveals she died from arsenic poisoning, and the local constabulary are called in because it seems that Mary wasn't that well loved, and in fact, there's only Superintendent Walshaw, the cricket team, and the young Dr. Chris that aren't on the list of suspects, and even then, they don't have a concrete alibi. What you get from here on in is a whodunit that culminates in a bit of a ruckus. Well, I'll leave Adam to fill in the rest.
What on earth makes a screenwriter suddenly decide to switch the action to a watermill of all places? At the climax of Death of an Angel, the villain snatches a child and takes them to his lair, a watermill, complete with water wheel, only for his nefarious plot to unravel. There's a bit of a punch-up, the villain goes crashing out the window, handily, the window right above the old water wheel, and you can guess what happens next. Oh, that's why screenwriters suddenly decide to switch the action to a watermill. The humble water wheel, then. Now, you may think that tracing the origins of so simple a device would be impossible. Not so. Apparently, water wheels were invented by Zigong, a pupil of Confucius, in 5th century BC China. By 1 AD, they were everywhere, and being used for all kinds of purposes, such as milling grain for bread, and pumping the old bellows so the chaps could forge iron and things. For hundreds of years, water wheels evolved and did other things. things for human beings. What they were, who knows, and frankly, who cares? Water wheels got far more interesting when they started appearing in films, and they always seemed to be involved in the killing of a chap. You had a water wheel almost taking the life of a sinister villain in disguise in Sherlock Holmes and the Scarlet Claw in 1944. Then you had Mr. Villain in Death of an Angel being punched in the snout and falling to a grisly death on a water wheel. In The Princess Bride, Wesley is essentially sucked to death by a water wheel or something. I think there's more to it than that, but basically the water comes down and the wheel goes round and Wesley screams a bit and then he's dead. What an evil water wheel.
As you know, the concept of the suction pump is centuries old. Well, really, that's all this is, except that instead of sucking water, I'm sucking life. I've just sucked 1 year of your life away.
My favourite water wheel in a film, which is something I never thought I'd admit, is the one in The Long Kiss Goodnight from 1996. Gina Davis gets tied to a water wheel and lowered into the water and held there in an attempt to extract information. But while she's under the water, she manages to grab a gun out of a drowned man's pants and uses it to free herself. What else? Nope, that's all I've got. But to get real for a moment, so many people in films have been punted to their doom because of water wheels, and yet for some reason, they keep on using them as part of their evil plans. And so from all of us here at the House of Hammer, if you're planning a crime soon or want to torture a pirate, then please consider hiding your loot or explaining the details of your plan to a sidekick while the hero creeps up on you in, I don't know, a mattress factory, for heaven's sake. Let's do all we can to drive down the water wheel villain death statistics, okay? Shocking. Anyway, I'd like to offer this small tribute as we remember those we've lost. Water wheels.
Ray Studios are completely different from the formidable concrete buildings that house most film productions. This late 18th century house in the village of Bray near Maidenhead looks most unlike a movie studio, but that's what it is.
As we often do, I'm going on a tangent and bringing you a little bit up to speed with where Hammer are at this particular point in history. Literally. When you think of a movie studio, thanks to the golden age of Hollywood, you tend to think of a studio having all of its offices, various departments, canteens and sound stages all in one place. You think of the Universals, the Warner Brothers, the Paramounts, the MGMs. I mean, even RKO had their own lot. Good grief. In Britain, though, things didn't quite work like that, and very few companies had exclusive facilities. At the time, it was as much to do with having the talent needed to run these places on a day-to-day basis as it was physically having the space to build such huge enclosures. And like so many other British studios, Hammer never really had a home to call its own. Instead, they would make films wherever they could in the home counties, starting off with Nettlefield, Beaconsfield, Marylebone, Cookham Dial Close, and slightly later moving over to Oakley Court and Gilston Park, before finally settling down at 118 Down Place on the bank of the River Thames, where the Davies family lived. Originally, Hammer rented this space from the family and started with The Dark Light until their lease expired after the 1952 film Wings of Danger. They once again had to make movies wherever they could, which included the Riverside and Southall studios, then taking the unusual step of filming Never Look Back at Exclusive's Manchester branch. And that was probably as a road trip. During this year of living out of a bag yet again, James Carreras, or Carreras depending who you are, he brokered a deal with the Davies family to buy 118 Down Place, which we all know now as Bray Studios. And this was as long as the Davies family could carry on living there in the west wing of the main building. This led to Hammer at least having its own dedicated studio lot for the next 14 incredibly successful years. Which is coincidentally the age of Judy Welling in this particular room. Or is it? Here's Smokey, just Smokey, like Brill Cream, but just that bit slicker, to tell you more.
The practice of actors playing roles that are younger is nothing new. I mean, back in old Billy Shakespeare's day, when it was illegal for women to act on stage, you had men playing children of both sexes, teenage girls, queens, and washerwomen. And this was all despite most of them having bulging codpieces and beards that touched their nipples. But fast forward to the 20th and the 21st century, things have improved somewhat. That's not to say the suspension of disbelief doesn't still exist. I mean, it's a headline story in the news when a studio seemingly forgets that no one needs a whitewashed character or that a trans role should be played by a trans actor. Hell, they still got Christian Bale to pile on the pounds to play Dick Cheney in Vice, when I'm sure there was a balding and tubby bloke who would have easily fitted the role just as well. These stories of Hollywood ridiculousness do tickle me somewhat. Not the ones that offend people, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I find Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's amusing, because that's just yikes. But I'll give you an example. In David Fincher's 2007 masterpiece Zodiac, Fincher decided that Jake Gyllenhaal's hands were too hairless and pretty. So what does he do? He digitally adds hair to his hands for any close-up shots. Are you honestly trying to tell me that in the whole of Hollywood, someone, hell, even a geezer working the craft service table, didn't have a bit more fur on his knuckles? That they could have just swapped him in? Anyway, as usual, I'm getting slightly off topic here. So, at the risk of causing any of my colleagues to suspect that I'm using this as another form of therapy, we shall get back to the subject at hand. And not a very hairy one at that. Today's Hammer production, Death of an Angel, we have Julie Summers playing Judy Welling. Now, our Julie here was 22 and playing a 14-year-old, so a decent gap of almost a decade. Julie does happen to be fortunate enough to have the young and innocent look down to a T, but does the acting performance match? Well, you'll have to wait for the round table to hear our thoughts on that. As usual though, this is not the biggest chasm of age difference we have been asked to believe in cinema over the years. There are some obvious ones that will spring to all of our minds, but I'm going to bring to you just a few of my favourites, and some that I was completely unaware of. Let's stick with the decade gap for just a minute. Jennifer Grey's character Baby, in the confirmed worst film ever made, Dirty Dancing, is supposedly a fresh-faced 17-year-old. Miss Grey was in fact 27 at the time. Is that fact alone enough to make me hate that film even more? Probably. Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can from 2002 has little Leo DiCaprio begin the film as a snot-nosed 15-year-old, where in fact he was pushing 28 when filming began. He can sleep with a bear, but can he pull that off? One of the ones that we probably all know, but certainly bears repeating, De Palma's horror classic Carrie from 1976 had Sissy Spacek playing the 17-year-old titular character while she was 25. It's a bloody good job she was good though, wasn't it? An example I had no idea about, probably because A, I've never seen the film, B, I have no interest, and C, because I don't like the star. But we go on to 1983's Yentl. Barbara Streisand's character was 16. The warbling songstress herself, just a mere 41 years of age by that point. Not so much, Papa, can you hear me, but more, Papa, can you believe these people fell for this ruse? And finally, the daddy of them all, Brad Pitt in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button from 2008. The Bradster was a pup at the tender age of 45 at the time, and was asked to play 11, and then eventually got younger. "Beat that, Streisand, you hack!" he said, famously. So there we go. Certainly not Hammer's most egregious sin they've committed to date, and probably not the worst of what's to come either. I mean, we haven't even got to On the Buses yet.
I'm already warming up my vocal cords for the sing-along on that one, Smokey. In fact, while I'm working on that, here's all of us together to discuss at great detail Death of an Angel and its subsequent impact on film history.
The dolphin-eared amongst you will remember from the last episode that I wrongly referred to this film as The Angel of Death rather than Death of an Angel, which I think would probably have been a better film. But anyway, we'll crack on. And what I want to put to my esteemed colleagues around the round table today is this is one of several murder mysteries that we've had of late. How would we rate this generally as a murder mystery? Without going into our sort of rating for the film itself, but what did you make of this as a murder mystery? Kev?
It works quite well because it sticks with a lot of the conventions of it, and it sticks to the traditions. You've got a lot of setup in the early part in introducing your basic suspects, and honestly, there's plenty of suspects. I don't think there's anybody that's not left as a suspect. I'm sure the postman probably is one as well at one point. So, yeah, I think it works quite well as a setup for a murder mystery.
Smokes?
If we're going by that, if we're talking about just the sort of the rules of your sort of basic murder mystery, as you say, then yeah, I'll agree with Kev on that. Gives you a decent location, gives you a decent list of characters who it becomes apparent some have motives, some don't. It points the finger of suspicion at several of our cast, of our players. So if we're going from that basic logic alone, I think it does that rather well. I would like to suggest, I mean, I know you unfortunately got the title there wrong, but I don't blame you for that because it's in your head, isn't it? The Angel of Death, so I don't blame that.
Yeah, always.
Exactly, but I would like to proffer an alternate title to this film, which is that every problem, regardless of what it is, can be solved by brandy. It's anything happens. You can't sleep. You're mourning. You're happy. You're stressed from moving house. Have a brandy. That's what this film is.
That's true though.
But I mean, it's in every scene of this film.
Yes,
I thought you were British.
It does fix.
I don't understand what you're saying. How did you not know?
You never do, mate.
That's what they put in the
sorry, it's just I nod off when you start talking. That's all. Hey.
Well, then let's throw it over to you, Mr. Smarty Pants.
Well, yeah, I concur.
What did you make of it?
I mean, it has a decent setup, and it follows. Yeah, chucks the suspects out. It's exactly like you two have said. It has the right ingredients. Not sure whether the recipe comes together entirely successfully. It's a bit of a sunken cake, ultimately. But yeah, it has the right ingredients. Yeah, for a murder mystery.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree as well. I think there's an awful lot going on. I think it's quite confusing in the best sense of the word. I think for probably the first 2/3 of the film, didn't entirely know what was going on, and I think that is actually to the film's credit. I'm not certain it's intentional, though, on behalf of the filmmakers, and certainly as the final sort of act unwinds, you think, oh, okay, I'm not really sure you know what you're doing here, and how have we ended up in this particular situation. But when you have, as you said, all of the characters that could be suspects, that are suspects, that seem to be doing things unconventionally or maybe against type in terms of what we've learned about them in the first sort of half of the film, and you wonder what sort of what reasons they have for what they're doing, and what the motives might be, and that kind of thing. It's all quite intriguing, I think. Is the payoff worthy of the intrigue, as I said, that it maybe accidentally creates? Not so sure it is, but it had me interested. It really did. And I don't want to do too many callbacks to the last film because I don't think it's fair to compare individual films. But what I will say is I was more gripped by this than the last one, but that's probably more to do with my sensibilities and my sort of subjectivity. I found this a more interesting murder mystery than the last film, The Whispering Smith. But, in fairness, there's a lot going on in both. Smokey?
I think it's interesting you say that, though, that there's quite a lot of time devoted to a bit of a mess and a bit of the film not wanting to know what it's doing. So the copy we've got is 62 minutes long. And, I don't know, 25 minutes of the opening, didn't really know what was going on. Didn't really know who was doing what was what was happening, who was there, and why.
Yeah, I was just to say, I would agree, and that had me intrigued. But as I said, not sure how intentional it was. But yes, please carry on.
No. I mean, I was literally just following up on your point, and I think you're right. How intentional it was is, I think, something that bears discussing, because this is based on a play. Again, we've been here before. Similar IP as we've encountered many, many times over the course of these 20 plus films that we've done of Hammer so far. And you've got to imagine the setup and the premise for what is about to occur after the half-hour mark, is what we've lost in this 62-minute version. It needed more fleshing out, and the how do I word this? The threat and the villain of the piece. It was a that's the villain? Is that it? Is that really the way you're going to go? There were a lot better options to go than where the film went. It would be very interesting to see the direction the play went, I think, in regards to where the film went.
Adam?
Well, I am an anomaly then, because I actually really liked the first 20 minutes of this film. But then again, first time I saw it, I thought a very different film was coming on the back of it. Like,
the Angel
you have
of
a doctor
Death.
arriving. You have a doctor arriving. If it wasn't for the title, like, just ignore the title totally and just start watching the film. And it's like, I didn't realize it was going to be like an Agatha Christie wannabe story. It feels like a doctor arriving in a small town village, and there's going to be some kind of mishap, and then a bit of tension, and then a resolution at the end. But basically,
all creatures great and dead. Yeah.
The best creatures. I really like the setup, and to be honest, the way it sets up the murder mystery, I thought was really clever, because what it does is, to cut a long story short, you have a family. The head of the family is a doctor, and a new doctor arrives to help him. So he's ingratiated into the household. Then this family friend comes over and disappears off upstairs with the mother, who's gone to show him something or other. And then, you see the child come down traumatized and says, she won't say what's happened or what's upset her. And then all of a sudden the mother's dead. And I really like that, because I think there's an element, if it had been too explicit with what the child had seen upstairs, then I think it would have been an even lesser story. I don't think it's a great murder mystery in itself. I think, it's a very, very pale imitation of an Agatha Christie story. But I like the fact that it does leave it open, because you haven't seen what the child's seen. Was it in her mind? Is she making it up? What she got against this visitor guy who's come over and done something upstairs to her mother or with her mother, and then the mother's mysteriously dead. I think the resolution to the story is the weakest part of it. I think it's like, well, that's what was signified the moment this started. It's like you haven't done anything clever with this story at all. You've said, oh, this is probably what's happened, but let's throw a load more red herrings, and no, we're going to give you the original, what you thought anyway. So I think in that way, it's really weak tea. Like the final act is, God, it's so disappointing. The second act is monotonous and drags on forever while they're asking questions. It's just an endless series of walking into a room. Now you, tell us what, when so-and-so happened, names you're supposed to have remembered from the first 15 minutes of the film, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and then there's this horribly hammy climax where the villain reveals themselves, even though you knew it was them all along, and starts twiddling moustaches, and it's like, God, this is just, what a
we all look together then.
You're obviously doing a lot of it. The solution is too obvious. It feels like a play because it's so bound to that house. But I did really, really like the village shots. I like the cricket things, and there's a bit where the little girl welcomes the doctor, and they're walking through the garden. You see, and it sort of pans across the village as they're walking. I was thinking, that's a really lovely location to have this story in. And I really hope it lives up to the fact that they've got out of, the studio itself and have shot this out somewhere. But unfortunately, ultimately, it doesn't. It's a wannabe Agatha Christie story, in my opinion. And I don't think it's nearly as clever as it needed to be.
I don't want to differ with you too much, but I really enjoyed the final act. The fact that you actually get out of the house where you've been stuck in for the last 40 minutes or so, and suddenly you're in real jeopardy. You know, you've got a young girl running through woods, and she's looking very much like she's in peril. And then you're taken to this water mill, and you know the climax of the whole thing takes place on this water wheel.
I'll tell you what, I will just quickly say I do agree with you on that bit. The bit where the girl goes off and she meets the big bad wolf in the woods that's very good. And it's just what happens after that. I just think that's. I do agree with you on that. Yeah,
I did like the fact that it's the big bad wolf. Well, I'm not going to say who it is, but the way that he is revealed, I thought it was quite a nice touch. You know, that you're introduced to his living room for the very first time, and it suddenly becomes evident that he's quite obsessed with the woman that's being killed, to such an extent that he's in denial that she's actually dead.
It's a shrine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very much a shrine. Yeah, it's a bit like the bloke in Alan Partridge when he's got a shrine to Alan Partridge. It's pretty much that level. But then, of course, you've got Judy Welling, who, to me, is a great character anyway, you know, and I feel like it's more about her, you know, not, you know, because you've got a lot of scenes where she's tying the whole thing together, the daughter of the police, you know, and she's got some great bits of business where you think, wow, this is really indicative of where women were at the point, you know, because she says, I'm not sure whether I want to get married or have a career. And you think, oh, God, yeah, wow, that's really telling, yeah.
Kev, just to follow on from that.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk for our next point about the character of Judy Welling. So Judy is the doctor's daughter. Judy's played by an actress called Julie Summers, who was 22 years old when playing this 14-year-old girl. 22 years old.
Wow.
Amazing.
And I think, and you can interpret this word however you like, I think it's a remarkable bit of acting. I'm not saying that's wholly positive, but it certainly isn't wholly negative. I'm really, really looking forward to what Smokey thought of how this character was portrayed. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Smokes.
Place your bets, lads.
Well, I'm pushing my whole hand onto Gordon Bennett. I hated this actress, but let's hear if I'm going home from Vegas with a bonanza or a bus ride home
with bully special prize.
Yeah.
I don't blame her for her performance. I blame someone who has told a 22-year-old woman to play a 14-year-old, and they've gone, oh, really? How do you think I should do that? So, well, you make your voice as high-pitched as possible, and then open your eyes as wide as possible so you look like a child. It was a diabolical performance that was earth-shatteringly bad in every conceivable way that a performance can be bad. When we do the Christmas episode in 6 months from now, and this isn't up for worst acting performance we have seen this year, then sorry, it is going to happen. It is going to happen. Atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. You want to play in a different part that's more age appropriate? Absolutely fine by me. The girl can act. But as I said, I don't lay the blame at her. I blame at whoever told her to act the way she acted. Because it was obvious that it wasn't her choice. It was like she was being restrained from putting in a performance that she could legitimately do. And so she put in this ham-fisted, just stereotypical child performance. And I know this is what you wanted to hear, Ben, and I can see the smoke.
No, it's not what I wanted to hear. in the sense that, because I think it's fair. What you say, I really do. I don't necessarily wholly agree, but in the same way, I honestly understand why you're saying it. I really do. Because it's odd. As I said, I use the word remarkable, and I mean it in the literal sense of the word. It's just...
It was distracting. It was distracting from moment one. The scene that Adam mentioned about the kicking the football into his chest. It was jarring.
She could play for the Arsenal, I have you know.
Yes, the Arsenal. You could play for them.
So for me, what I liked was, and again, it comes back to the theme throughout the entire film. I'm not entirely sure how intentional this was. I really liked the fact we ended up effectively with an adult who was acting like a child, trying to be an adult, and that's what I got, was that you because they were 22, you got the legitimacy of someone who was that age, but it was portrayed through a child, because the whole way through she's trying to be older and trying to be braver than she is. And again, I'm not entirely certain how intentional it was, but I really enjoyed it. The first 20 minutes, I'll agree, I was sitting there going, whoa, how on earth am I supposed to interpret this character? But I think she cracked a joke. I think at one point when Uncle Pervo comes in, and she's like bored to tears by him, it's like, right, I'm going to bed. And I laughed out loud at that, because I imagined it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. And I was won over by her, I'll fully admit. Adam?
I think it's very interesting that, I mean, you told us, spoiler alert, you told us a couple of days ago that the actress who played her was 22. And all of us went, what? So I don't think it's a legitimate thing to say, she doesn't act like a kid, because she had us all fooled. And I don't think any of us would have known she wasn't a kid if you hadn't gone and done the research. I think she's done a great job. I think the problem is that acting performances from children are so hit and miss that you can't tell sometimes whether a kid is from repertory theatre or actually being whipped on by some director. No, you didn't do it right again. Get in the front of the camera and give us more tweedledum and twirl your hair a bit and kick a ball at someone. So I think it's a really successful performance, but I can't say I don't find her irritating, because I do, but I think that's something completely different. But by God, 22 years old playing a kid, absolutely she pulls it off. Yeah.
It's the irony in that line right at the beginning where the doctor arrives and she says, "Oh, I'm so bored. I don't have anyone here my own age except Anne the nurse."
Older than them all. That's why.
But Anne the nurse, who plays the doctor's love interest, is exactly the same age in real life. That's what really amused me.
I don't have anyone here my own age. Yeah, she was murdered in Act 1. That's why.
I love the fact that she actually asks for a port and passion fruit, which is a new one on me. I mean...
have you tried it yet, Kev?
Not yet, no, because it's really hard to find a passion fruit around here. I don't even know what one is.
What, tropical Doncaster? You got me choked.
They worshipped them as gods in Doncaster.
Absolutely. That or a can of Spam. And,
port and Spam.
Spam and
proper cocktail.
That's called a Doncaster doggy, isn't it?
It is now.
But the fact that she asked for this port and passion fruit, again, it's back to how the kids are treated, and her dad actually says, "Go away, you little beast," and it's a little snippet, and it just shows you the behaviours to young girls at that particular time. And I thought that was a quite interesting piece to throw into a play, that didn't need to be there, but it was just an interesting bit of business. I quite enjoyed that.
So before we get to our ratings and overall feelings about the film, I'd like to talk about the last act, because I think what we've deduced in the conversation so far is, I think, Kev, you like the last act.
Yep.
The other three of us maybe not so keen. So if we could just say a little bit about what we like, what we didn't like about it. Smokey, I'm going to head over to you first and say a little bit about the last act.
Fair enough. I didn't mind the last act; it was fine, but it was just too short. When you reduce something down to a massive denouement of what is, as you say, is a murder mystery, and reduce it down to the last 4 minutes of the film, what's the point? I mean, as I said, you have this wonderful sequence through the forest, and it's kind of dark and murky, and also you get the villain showing their true colours, which was kind of cool. But unfortunately, you have this set piece where you bring in you're in this watermill, and which looks great. And we're in the black and white. We have the dark, we have the water, we have the wheel going round, we have the noise of it, and that's great. But it did just smack of the fact that people were just looking, oh, look at this location we're in. We've got a water mill there. How do we utilize it? And do they utilize it well? No, they don't really. And also the fact is that we've seen this before. Someone gets intimidated off a ledge. And we've been there, we've done that. Do we really need to see it again? Although something I have to admit was that, okay, you don't see it, but the villain sort of intimidating themselves to death in a water wheel, even though it's off screen, is kind of brutal in a little way. And the scream that they emit is kind of cool as well.
I would say he over-enthuses himself to death.
It's like watching Gollum and Smeagol.
Same face.
Kev, what did you think, Kev? Last act.
I really enjoyed the last act. Bizarrely, we've talked about Agatha Christie, and there's quite a few of her films where everything comes together in the last 28 seconds, and you think, oh, Jesus Christ, that's what, when they all get drawn together in the colouring in room, and then the detective just says, yes, it was the butler, and then suddenly the butler decides he's going to crack out a Luger and try and shoot everybody. So that's just about the same as this, that's how these films work. The last bit is just the icing on the cake, basically. So I was fine with it. I thought it was a great way to finish off. I was a bit disappointed that we didn't have more of the superintendent actually getting up on the whole thing, because I thought he was a great character. I think he's probably the most dependable policeman we've seen so far. He knew what he was doing. Yeah, he was a really good place. So,
Adam, what did you think of the sort of finale of the film?
It was a bit of a damp squib for me, to be honest, because the problem is with this film is that it sets up the mystery, after 15 minutes and says, I bet you think it's that guy, right? And you go, well, yeah. And they go, no, look at this guy. And you go, no, it's still that guy. And you go, yeah, but hang on a minute. How about this one? And you go, no, it's that guy. And you go, no, it isn't. Honestly, look over here. Who's behind this curtain? And you go, no, I still think it's that guy. And they go, fine, it is that guy. And you go, yeah, what's he going to do? Is he going to die or go to prison? Oh, he's going to die. I mean, that's the difference with this and an Agatha Christie story, is Agatha Christie conceals the clues like crazy, but still gives you enough information that you can work it out for yourself if you try. And the problem is that they do a good job of obscuring the mystery to begin with. Then they give you no other credible person it could be. It's like they do the thing with the daughter. She's seen something. But it would be great if it had been something that she thought she'd saw, or maybe something happened to the daughter, or maybe the daughter and the killer were in something together. And it makes you wonder. But then at the end it goes, no, it was the most obvious conclusion after all, and it's this guy, the one you thought it was all along. So basically, if you're going to obscure a mystery that well, then make it count. And they don't make it count, and that's the problem. You walk into this film and you go, it's got to be that guy. They give you a little bit of mystery and a load of red herrings, and it turns out to be the guy it was. So it's very disappointing in terms of mystery. And the rest of the film is fine. It's all right. It's a lot of little bits that work. Like I say, the obscuring at the beginning works slightly. The bit where, like Kev says, the daughter's running through the forest and she comes across the big bad wolf, I think that's a really good scene. But it's just a lot of little bits that work, strung together by a load of boring stuff that doesn't work. And an ending, it didn't really bother me that it was on a water wheel. It had to play into what happened to the villain somehow. Of course it did. Otherwise, why have it at a water wheel? But yeah,
you could have had it anywhere, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But if
it didn't need to be there.
Exactly. But if you're going to have it out to water wheel, there has to be a reason for it to be out to water wheel. So they make good use of it being out a water wheel, which is cool. If they have it, on a very high skyscraper, then the villain's going to fall off the end. If you're on a water wheel, he's going round and round.
Yeah.
If it's Blackpool Tower, it's going to go.
Yeah, if they have a fight on a bed of nails, why else? Yeah. So, it's a lot of little bits that work well, but I don't think it's strung together very well. That's the problem.
Okay, I think I largely agree with some of what's been said there. So what I'm going to ask you now is a simple question, yes or no. Do you find water wheels frightening? Kev?
That's a good question.
I don't think so.
That's not one word, mate. That's a few words.
No.
Right.
Then fine, no.
Smokey?
Nope.
Adam?
Yes, if I'm on it. Yes.
Let me tell you why I'm asking. In Serbia, should you be Serbian, water wheels have a bizarre place in folklore. In fact, many people have sort of.
This is my favourite thing that's ever happened on the show.
They have beliefs. So according to folk tales, the watermill was built by God, but the devil knew the secret of how to make corn fall into the grinder, making it the only common creation of these two powerful forces, good and evil. So legend has it that vampires, fairies, and other supernatural beings gathered in the watermill at night. So when night came, villagers rarely went to water mills without sort of steaks and garlic and all that. And even though this fear is unfounded, it has actually remained alive for centuries with Serbian people. So in their minds, they're like mysterious buildings, beyond our realm. And, even to this day, that belief still exists. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting thing because
I mean, it's interesting. It's lots of though, isn't it?
Well, only to the skeptical non-Serbians like you, Smokey.
We built them
on rock and roll. But that's Kev. Then your rating and summary.
My rating would be 6 out of 10, and summary would have to be everything can be solved with a strong cup of tea or a brandy. They actually.
Just like real life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kev, we're not reviewing your life. We're talking about.
I just love the fact that they go in the middle of the night to deliver a baby in the early parts of the film.
Not in the post. Can we just have that? Like, he means help a woman in labour, not like post it out to like somewhere.
DHL.
This was so much cheaper in those days.
How many stamps should we put on this baby?
But yeah, the fact that they actually turn up at the house and the husband's a bit distraught and said, right, just get him a good strong cup of tea. And the fact that nobody's actually mentioned that we've got a prime candidate for being the first person to be killed in this film, which was Katie Johnson starring as Sarah Oddy, who was the old woman that we see at the beginning, who I thought was going to be the victim. I thought with there being a feeble old woman, she was the one that was going to go first. And she's the old woman from...
Lady Killers.
Lady Killers. And I thought, yeah, she's definitely going to be the victim. And then it sidesteps completely, and you end up with this much younger woman. And I'm like, oh, this is quite interesting. So for that, yeah, I'm happy with the 6 for this, because it does mill about quite a bit again, but there's plenty to keep you interested.
Adam?
I'd go slightly low. I'd go give it a 5, I think. Again, it's one of those films that I didn't really love. I probably won't go back to, but there were bits in it that I found memorable, like the setup. I thought was quite good, and I don't know what it is about that setup that you guys didn't like, but I seem to have liked. I think I like the fact that they obscure a lot. The kid's traumatized by something she's seen. And I like the pastoral setup and that kind of thing. I think it goes downhill from there. It's like a general on the old interest scale for me. But I didn't hate it. I think it's quite a nice looking film. And I don't know. There's something about it. I'm so straight down the middle on it. I didn't really dislike a lot. I just I found myself just a bit turned off by the way it progressed, that was all. And as an Agatha Christie ripoff, I thought it was weak tea, I'm afraid. But 5 out of 10.
Smokey?
I just want to pick up on what Kev said there, which was we hadn't mentioned that Katie Johnson is in this, and Lady Killers is one of my favourite films of all time, and to see her in this was lovely. But I just want to say that my favourite line in the whole film is said by Katie Johnson, which wouldn't look out of place in a 2000s Steven Seagal or Jean-Claude Van Damme film when she says, "You go back to your job. I'm too busy to die."
Yes.
And it was like, thank you.
Yes.
It was, I could hear Steven Seagal say that. It was just, yeah, you go back to your job. I'm too busy to die.
I say the exact opposite at work every day.
Well, exactly, yeah. This is a misstep. It doesn't flesh out anything that really needs to be done. It takes its time far too long at the beginning. I was bored. The first 20 minutes or so, I was bored. I didn't really care about any of these people. I didn't think that, and again, problems with posh people, I didn't really care why they were doing what they were doing. And also the really weird section, sort of about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through, where you've got the doctor and the nurse trying to hide evidence from the police. I know that the person the police were trying to get is their friend, and I get it, and they're convinced he's innocent. But it just treaded water, and it was just frustrating by that point. So I didn't really care. And then by the end, they were all rushing, and then, as I said, the ending was too rushed. But I didn't. Again, I'm with Adam. It's not something I'm gonna hate, and it's not something I'm gonna love. But it's not something that's gonna stay in the mind. So I'm the same as Adam. It's right down the middle. It's a 5. This is the very definition of a meh movie that we've watched from Hammer so far. It is. I mean, we've seen a few of them that we've given a 5 to. It's not worth a 4 or a 3 because it's not terrible. It's straight down the middle. It's a 5.
I think I might have sort of projected what I thought of the opening 20 minutes slightly wrong in terms of Adam's feelings. I would agree. I was confused, but confused in the right way. I'd agree. It's not I think we're all largely in the same ballpark here. You know, this is not a divisive film. But I think I did enjoy it slightly more than you lot. I think that there were things I enjoyed that it hinted at. There was a matricide angle that was there for a few minutes, and there's a drug addiction angle that we haven't really talked about that I thought was really, really interesting for a film of this period and this type. I'd agree. The end, the last scene really let it down, and I think it really lost its way. People started running around, and I didn't really understand where they were going or what they were doing. I don't think they explained that. And I think, to go back to a point that Smokey made, I think they really could have made more of why characters were doing certain things. You really had to read a lot into it yourself as a viewer, and particularly the whole sort of, I'm covering up for my friend stroke, fellow doctor, or is he my lover? And he wasn't, spoilers. So that made kind of no sense. But I would say I was somewhere between a 6 and a 7 for this. And I think I am going to give it a 6. I want to give it a 7, but I'm going to give it a 6. I enjoyed it more than I think all three of you did, but I completely accept what you've all said. It is right down the middle. It's bang, middle of the road mediocrity. But I would enjoy it more, I think, than some of the other films that fit in this bracket that we've seen so far. But no, overall, it's another. You go into these B movies with no expectations, and it certainly didn't disappoint me based on that.
I'd agree on that.
There were things to enjoy, and it wasn't a wasted hour. I'll give it that at least.
Can I just quickly say though, Patrick Barr, who plays Robert Welling, the father of the family, we've seen him already.
Yeah, in To Have and To Hold.
Yeah, it's Having to Hold. Do you know he played in Hammer films right up until 1973? He played Lord Carradine in The Satanic Rites of Dracula as well. So,
my God.
Bit of a Hammer hero.
God damn it.
He'll get his turn.
Well, he won't, because this is the last Hammer film until then, so let's make sure we mention it.
We will do it in 1973. That's in 10 years'
Put
time.
it in the notes for 1973. For the
21 years away.
Episode 225 or whatever it is.
And there you go. Death of an Angel. A bit of a sidestep into more traditional territory with a whodunit. But despite what Adam says, I didn't see it coming partly because I'm never any good at these things, and partly because I was looking for a man who is 3'5" and wearing size 15 galoshes when there's not a clown in the picture at all. I was really confused. If you're scared of water wheels, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us by the old email, scream@houseofhammerpod.gmail.com, or the Insta and Twitter, @househammerpod. And if you're left wanting for more from us, and why wouldn't you be, head on over to patreon.com/househammerpod, where there's loads of extra content. Hopefully, in our show notes, there's also a link to our online store, because it's too long for me to remember. There, you can cover yourself in all our lovely merch whilst sipping port from one of our pint pots or meths from one of our mugs. It's been lovely to have you with us on this adventure, and we hope you're back again soon, because next time, things are getting tense in the world's sexiest bookshop. Until then...
From me, Smokey.
From me, Ben Tillison.
From me, Adam Roach.
And me, Kev Moore. Stay well.